This lecture is about managing cash flow. Okay, it's about the mentality of how to think about how to spend your money on a month-to-month basis. And when we think about our budget and our cash flow, we need to think about the cash flow cycle. So a household's financial statements has four primary components: income and expenses, and assets and liabilities. And these are connected to each other. They affect each other. And money flows through your household through these four categories. So every time you get a paycheck, every time you have income, you have three options of what you can do with it. You can consume it first. Consuming it just means to spend it. And when you consume income, you create expenses. Your second option is to save it. We save money by buying assets: checking accounts, savings accounts, stocks, bonds, cars, houses, clothes, all assets. Okay, so any income that we save through assets. Our last option is to repay our debts. So if you have debts from your past, you need to make payment on those, and so that's something that you can and will do with your income. And so all of your income can flow into any of the other three categories. They can become assets, it can reduce liabilities, or it can be used to pay expenses. Now, how does it cycle? Well, liabilities create expenses, right? So a mortgage is a debt that you've used to buy a house. And that loan has a mortgage payment. And so that payment comes from the loan and becomes an expense. On the other hand, many assets can produce income for us. So as you buy assets, some of those assets can produce income. And so the more you save, the more assets you have, if they're the right kind of assets, can produce more income, which gives you more that you can save, consume, or repay later in the future. And so this is how your income flows through your house. When you earn income, you're going to save, consume, or repay. And then those things affect your cash flow for future months. So let's talk about consuming it, right? Consuming just means to spend it. And we only get satisfaction for our money indirectly. If we don't spend our money, we may as well not have it, right, at the end of the day. And so consuming it just means we're going to spend it now to support our current lifestyle. And our life cycle theory gives us some advice, right? We want to consume about the same amount every year, maintain this consistent standard of living. We don't want to have lots of money in one year and no money the next. We want a pretty consistent amount of time. Now, the thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about how much of my income should I consume is that every dollar I consume now is a dollar I can't have later, right? So you got to think about the future. Will I need this dollar later more than I need it now? So that takes a little forethought, a little planning. What does my future look like? Sometimes our short-term future looks stable. Like, yeah, I can spend this dollar because I'll just get another dollar next month, right? I'll get another paycheck. But when you look long-term, eventually everyone retires. And so you need to start thinking, I need to provide income for my future, and so maybe I should not consume every dollar I have now. Maybe I should save it. Okay, so if you're thinking about saving, you need to think about which asset should I buy. And when you're thinking about assets to buy, you need to ask yourself this question: what is the purpose of saving this money? What's the money going to be used for? So if you're going to use the money to use things, then you need to buy tangible assets. You're going to buy houses, cars, clothes, computers, right? You want to buy things to use, then you need to buy tangible assets. Now, tangible assets are great because they improve our current and future lifestyle. Okay, that buying a car is great because it gives me a ride today, right? I have transportation today, but I also have transportation tomorrow, and I have transportation the day after that. And for years into the future, I can keep driving that car and keep using it. And so it can keep producing satisfaction for me for an extended period of time. Same for houses, cars, clothes, computers, all of those tangible assets have this wonderful benefit of being able to be used and provide happiness for us long term. So that's great. The downside is that tangible assets go down in value. Okay? They depreciate. Okay, your clothes, I don't know if you ever tried to sell your used clothes, but if you ever try, you're going to be surprised to find that you don't get a lot of money for used clothes. Okay? Used computers, used cars, these all go down in value. Houses are a little bit more complicated, but if you have a house, you have to pay money to keep it up. So its value can only go up if you're also paying to fix it up on an ongoing basis. If you don't pay to fix the house, its value will go down. All of these tangible assets, while they're great for being used for extended periods of time, they are not great for holding value over the long term. If you want an asset to do that, then you need to buy investment assets like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Okay, these are the assets that grow or are expected to grow in the long run. And so when you're thinking about, I want to fund my retirement or some long-term financial goals, you need investment assets to do that. The downside is that investment assets are not easily spent or used, right? You can't use bonds the way you use a car. But if you're holding it for the long term, it can earn interest for you and give you more income in the future than you could have had in the present. Lastly, if we want our assets to be available to spend, then we need liquid assets. This is like checking accounts and savings accounts, right? This is where you're going to keep the money that you're going to use to make your regular transactions, right? You're going to buy groceries with your liquid asset. All the things that you buy, if you're going to need this money within the next few months to a year, it definitely needs to be in liquid assets so that it's available to be spent when you need it. Now, your third option is to repay your debts. You have to make the minimum payment on any loan that you currently have. But you do have an option to pay more. And if you pay more than the minimum, then you'll pay off the loan sooner and reduce the total amount of interest that you have to pay on the loan. So that's great, right? That's a nice perk. I can save myself interest by repaying my debts a little bit faster by making a larger payment. That's great, but there is a cost to doing that, right? Every dollar you use to repay your debts early saves you interest, but it also reduces how much you can consume today. So if I'm using it to pay off my loans and I can't use it to go on vacation or buy fast food or whatever other things I want to do to live and enjoy today. It's also a dollar I can't save. If I'm repaying my loans, then I'm not going to pay interest on the loan, or I'll pay less interest. But when I do that, I give up the right to earn interest on any asset that I might have invested that dollar in. So you have to think about that. It's not just inherently good to repay your debts, because there are other things that you could do with that money. And our budgeting process, long term, our mentality is to think about, when will my money serve me best? How will it serve me best? And let's assign it to do that job. And so there's a role to be said for repaying debts early, but there's also to be said for saving early. And there's also good things to be said for consuming our money and having a nice lifestyle now. We need to balance all three of these needs. Okay, and so I call this the tug of war of needs. We have present, future, and past needs that all need to be satisfied. And it can get to feel kind of overwhelming. It's like, I only have one paycheck. How am I supposed to maintain my standard of living now, repay my debts, and save for the future with one little paycheck? Feels a little intimidating. Well, the good news is that we often have more resources than we may realize. Okay, so money can come from one of three sources for us. We can use our present income, just use our paycheck, whatever's left over after taxes, etc. We can tap our past income by spending our assets, or we can spend future income by taking on debt. So we have three needs, past, present, and future needs, and we have three sources of income, past, present, and future sources of income. And we need to balance these sources of income against these needs. Okay, so when we're thinking about spending some money on anything, whether it's groceries or a house, doesn't matter if it's big or small, here's the process you can kind of go through to think about the best way to use your money. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you're going to estimate the direct costs. Secondly, you're going to identify what resources do I have available. Third, you're going to estimate the finance charges for each resource. Next, you'll evaluate the benefits of making that decision. And lastly, you're going to make a decision on which resource to use or whether or not to even make the purchase at all, and then you'll go ahead. So step 1 and 2 are generally fairly simple. The direct cost is just the price of the thing you're buying, whether it's $150 worth of groceries or $25,000 for a car. It's just the price of the thing you're buying. Identifying available resources is something that you have to do on a case-by-case basis. But check, what income do I have? Do I have any assets that I can use to purchase this? And what loan options may be available? Right? That's how you explore past, present, and future income. Where I really want to spend some time here is talking about finance charges and benefits. Okay, so a finance charge is a price you pay to access your resource. If you're using past or future income, assets or liabilities to buy things, you're going to have to pay money to access that resource. Only your current paycheck is free and clear to use. So what do you have to pay to access that? So let's say, for example, you buy a designer gown with your credit card. You're going to have to pay interest on the card, and that interest is an example of a finance charge. It's the cost to take out a loan on the credit card. Now, there's lots of different types of finance charges. Interest on loans is the one most people tend to think about and know the most about. However, there's also withdrawal fees, penalties, transaction costs, origination fees, taxes. It doesn't matter what they call it. If you have to pay $1 to access this money, to be able to spend this money, to make this purchase, it's a finance charge, and you need to consider it in your decision-making process. A cost that's often overlooked is called the opportunity cost. And an opportunity cost is what you give up in order to use a resource. It's the opportunity that you have to give up. Right? So if I use money to buy one thing, I can't use it to buy something else. That's an opportunity cost. Now, opportunity costs can be very large, and you need to always at least consider them when you're thinking about things. So, for example, let's say you pull money out of your retirement account to pay for a cruise. Okay, the opportunity cost will be the interest that the money you withdrew could have earned, right? If you just left them in the account, it would have continued to earn interest. How much would it have earned? That's your opportunity cost. You lose the opportunity to earn interest if you pull the money out of the account. And you need to factor that into your decision because it can be a very, very large cost and can dramatically change the way that you look at the decision of whether or not to use this particular resource. All right, so now that you've figured out the direct cost and the finance charges, you're going to add them together to get the total cost. Okay, so the total cost is going to be the direct cost, or the sales price, plus all of your finance charges. That's the total cost. And at this point, you're probably going to have several different options of how can I pay for this purchase. So at this point now, you're going to determine which gives you the most benefit for the lowest cost and do that. Let's talk about evaluating benefits then. This actually, to me, is the hardest part. I can teach you, and I will teach you through this course, how to calculate the financial benefits and the financial costs. That's easy. The math is pretty well known. It's fairly straightforward. Your calculator can give you a number for dollars. What it can't do is evaluate intangible benefits. This is where it gets tricky. So there may be financial benefits like interest earned on an investment or home equity that you get through appreciation of a home, but intangible benefits, the convenience, savings in time, how much fun did I have, or prestige, recognition, self-esteem, feeling good, that's hard to put a price tag on. A lot of times you'll hear people say, you can't put a price on that, right? They'll say, oh, I know the wedding gown's expensive, but look at the bride's smile. You can't put a price on that smile. I understand what people mean when they say this, but with all due respect, I think you can put a price on that smile. I think you have to put a price on that smile. I think you have put a price on that smile, even if you haven't realized it. Because if there was no way to price that, if there was no way to say, is this worth it, then everyone would have $200,000 wedding dresses, and everyone would go on $500,000 vacations, okay? But nobody's doing that, or not very many people are doing that. At a certain point, you stop and say, you know what? It's just not worth it. I love this car, but it's too expensive. It's just not worth it. I love the dress, but it's just not worth it. You are deciding the intangible value of that purchase and weighing it against the financial cost. Whether or not you realize that you're doing it. So let's get the financial cost right and then step back and look inside ourselves and say, what is the benefit? Okay, what is the benefit? Is it Is it worth paying this much money to feel this good or to have this much fun? Whatever that intangible benefit is it worth paying X number of dollars to save myself Y number of hours of work? You got to ask yourself that question. Is it worth it? And this is where it gets truly tricky. You need to correctly identify how much value you get for these intangibles. And there's not a correct answer, and there's no calculation you can do. There's no answer key. It's different for every person. How much I enjoy something will be different from how much you enjoy it. And so that's what makes this so hard. Okay, so think carefully about it. The intangible benefit. Sit down and identify it and weigh it carefully. Is it really worth it? All right, that's a lot of steps, and it probably feels kind of like a confused mess. So let's go through an example. I think this will clear it up and help you understand what we're talking about. Let's say Betty wants to buy a Segway scooter for $5,000. She currently has $200 a month in disposable income, $500 in her savings account, $25,000 in her retirement account, and $7,500 in home equity. So let's go through our steps and help her decide the best way to purchase this scooter. All right, step one, we're going to estimate the direct cost. Super easy. The price costs $5,000. That's the direct cost. Step two, identify available resources. A little bit more complicated. She has $200 in disposable income, so she could just use that present income, but it's not enough to buy it now. She's going to have to wait and accumulate, save up her $200 a month until she has enough money. But she could use that. She has $25,000 in a retirement account. That might do the trick. That should be enough money. She has $7,500 in home equity. She might be able to tap that and use that. That seems like it's enough money. Or she could borrow. Let's say she has a credit card that charges 22% interest. Let's say she's going to use that. Let's stop there. We'll evaluate these four available resources. She could have many other available resources. Maybe the scooter company has a loan that she could take, or maybe the bank could give her a personal loan. There could be all sorts of different loans that she could take out. She may have a car that she could sell. And on and on and on. Tons of available resources. You're going to have to limit yourself and say which ones actually make feasible sense. Selling my car to buy a Segway scooter? Probably not feasible, so I'm not even going to bother doing the calculations. That's okay. You have to pare it down at some point. So we're going to pare this one down and just evaluate these four different potential sources. All right, let's estimate the finance charges for each. Now, in these examples, I'm going to talk about the finance charges and tell you the dollar amount. Don't worry about if you don't understand what these charges are or how to calculate them. We'll talk about them more throughout the semester. For now, focus on the process, the thought process. How am I thinking about this? Focus on that. Don't worry so much about the numbers or the names of the finance charges, because we will cover all of them throughout the course of the class. All right, are there any finance charges with using her current income? The answer is no. There's never any charge for using your current income, so that's great. That's a big benefit. $0. That's good. Problem is, her $200 a month is not sufficient. She's going to have to wait. So if she adds her $200 a month to the $500 she currently has in her checking account and gets to earn 1%, it'll take her about 23 months to have saved up enough cash. That's a simple time value money problem that we should be able to calculate by the end of this unit. That 2-year wait is an intangible cost, right? She wants a Segway now. She doesn't want to wait 2 years. That's a cost, but it's not a financial cost. It's an intangible cost. So using her current income saves her money, but costs her time. Is that good or bad? That's for her to decide. It's for us to tell her what are the numbers. But it's about 2 years, right? 23 months, that's just 1 month shy of 2 years. That's an intangible cost of using her current income. Okay, she can use her home equity. Are there finance charges or fees? Answer is yes. So closing costs on home equity loans can be significant. Let's say she asks her bank and her bank tells her the closing cost is $2,000. Now she'll have to pay interest on the loan. If the interest rate is 5%, she pays it off over 3 years. She's going to have $476 in interest that she'll have to pay. And so the finance charge for using home equity is $2,000 closing cost plus $476 in interest is $2,476 in finance charge if she uses her home equity. Now, she could pull money out of her retirement account. Are there fees or charges for that? Answer, yes. She's going to have to pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty, and she's going to have to pay income taxes on her withdrawal. So that means she's going to have to withdraw $6,600 from her account. The reason she's going to withdraw $6,600 is because she's going to have to pay $660 in the penalty and $940 in taxes. However, we have not thought about our opportunity cost yet. All the money she pulls out of that retirement account loses the opportunity to earn interest for her. So if she just left her $6,600 in her retirement account for 30 years, it would have earned her $97,000 in interest if she had just left it alone. And so the finance charge for using her retirement account is $660 penalty, $940 taxes, and $97,000 in opportunity cost for a total finance charge of $98,600. You may be thinking, whoa, that's ridiculous. That's a lot of money to pay. $98,000 you're going to pay for a $5,000 scooter? That seems like a bad idea. And you'd be right. That's a lot to pay. However, I'm going to let you in on a secret. This is very common. People use their retirement savings to buy things all the time. The percentage of people who save in their retirement account has risen to just over 90%. 90% of people are actually using the retirement account their employer provides. That's fantastic. And yet, as of 2019, the average retirement account balance that people have when they retire is only $50,000. That's less than 1 year's salary for most people. How can people be saving all these years and yet have no money when they go to retire? The answer is they cash it out. On average, in the United States, we change jobs every 2 years. And what happens is when you change jobs, you get a letter from the retirement plan. And they say, we heard you left your job and you're not participating in the retirement plan anymore. What would you like us to do with the money in your account? We can hold on to it for you. We can roll it into an IRA. Or we can send you a check in the mail. And people are like, check in the mail? I could use some money right now. And so they ask for the check. And they take that check and go spend it on whatever they want. People are doing that because they don't understand this finance charge. They don't understand how expensive that is, what they're really losing by doing that. The other reason they do it is because they need more money now. So when you change jobs, don't just cash out that balance, because if you do, you're going to pay this $98,000 or more. You're going to lose all of that. And then when you go to retire, you'll have nothing left. So that's why I'm showing you how to get these numbers, because the numbers are pretty compelling. The $98,000 is a lot of money to pay just to buy a Segway scooter. Okay, what if she uses her credit card? Are there finance charges? Yes, the interest rate is 22%. So if she uses $100 per month of her disposable income, she'll have to pay $8,700 in interest. So the finance charge of the credit card is $8,700. All right, we've evaluated now the finance charges of all four resources, all four methods of paying for this Segway scooter. So now let's compare them. So if she uses her current income, the direct cost, the price of the scooter, is still $5,000, but there's no finance charge. However, we have to think about that 2-year wait. That 2-year wait. Is it worth waiting 2 years? Now, her next best option looks like using home equity. Right? The finance charge, $2,476. Her question she needs to ask herself at this point, the retirement account is not good, the credit card's not good, because those both cost more than home equity. If she's not going to use her current income, then she needs to use her home equity because it's the least expensive option. So the question now that she has to answer, that I can't answer for her because I am not her, is 2 years waiting worth $2,400? If she pays with her current income, she will have to wait 2 years to get the Segway. If she wants that Segway now, the cheapest way she can get it now is to pay $2,400 in finance charges through her home equity loan. And now she just has to answer the question, is 2 years worth $2,400? The answer may be yes. The answer may be no. That's up to her. Only she can make that decision. If this is you and you're trying to think, is it worth buying a new car because this is the finance charges, or should I wait a year or two and then buy the car? I can only give you the numbers. I can't tell you what this 2 years is really worth because it's different for every person. And that's when I say the intangibles is the hardest. Now, there may be other methods besides these 4. Notice, for example, if she pays $200 a month on her credit card instead of $100 a month, she'll pay it off more quickly, and she'll only pay $1,800 in interest for $6,800 total cost. So if she does that, her finance charge is $1,800, and now her question becomes, okay, is 2 years worth $1,800? 2 years of riding the scooter worth $1,800 in finance charge? That's her question. That's what she needs to decide. You can apply this process to any expense. You can apply it to groceries if you want. Now, you don't necessarily need to, though, right? This is primarily a way of thinking about this process. Am I willing to pay extra to get things now? Or am I willing to wait and earn a reward? If I wait, I can invest. And if I invest, I'll earn money, right? So what we're really trying to do is place a value on our time. Value, time. Have we heard those words put together before? Yes, we have, right? The time value of money. So all this is about taking that 2 years that Betty's looking at there, 2 years of waiting. What's the value of those 2 years? How much am I willing to pay to get rid of that 2-year wait? So as you make all of your decisions, as you're structuring your budget month to month, ask yourself, am I willing to have less now to have more later? If so, then I need to save in investment assets. Am I willing to have less later so I can have more now? Pay more, right? If you're Betty in this example, Betty's going to have less later because she's got to pay the interest if she buys the Segway now. So paying that finance charge gives her less money total, but more satisfaction now. That's the trade-off. That's the balance. Is she willing to do that? You need to strike this balance. You can't have nothing now and lots later. You want to have a good life always. And so striking a balance and thinking about identifying the most efficient way to acquire your major purchases is the best way to sort of think about balancing your budget and assigning money to take care of your future as well as taking care of your present.